really changing how children interact in school. We heard from countless other students who wrote responses. We've heard from parent groups. We've heard from many other civic organizations providing feedback on this policy. And what you see today is the attempt to make a workable policy that is statewide, but also one that allows local districts some flexibility in how it's implemented. And so I'm going to turn over to Robert to talk through what the proviso says and what some of those definitions are. Thank you.
I have the next slide. Perfect. So just kind of want to walk you all through the proviso process and then also our development process. The first part and the proviso. So this is the final proviso that passed. The House had a different version of their budget. When it went to the Senate, they made a few adjustments in there, namely that the state board would be the one to promulgate or to create the first policy, the policy that would be adopted. They also put the word access in there instead of, I believe, the word use. And also, they put school day rather than instructional day. So these kinds of tweaks helped inform some of our policy making as well. I then went back to the House. The House passed this version. So it's very clear legislative direction from both House and Senate that they want something to be done, as well as the other shareholder feedback we received. So there are a few key words we had to define in here. If we can go to the next slide. So these are kind of ideas, words, and concepts we were working to define and kind of frame out. So the first is access. What is kind of different between access and use? Access is the idea that it can't be on a person. So you'll see here, viewing, holding, wearing, or otherwise using a device for the purpose of communication, internet access, gaming, recording, or other function. That then begs the question, what is a device? So we kind of split those into two categories. You got personal communication devices, things like cell phones, tablets, and then you also have communication device accessories, whether that's AirPods, earbuds, smartwatches, things like that. That was one thing that was really emphasized in a lot of shareholder feedback, particularly from teachers, was they said even if we were able to keep the cell phones in pockets, oftentimes students are still communicating on their smartwatches. I will fess up to that in college as well, lots of thumbs up on texts. So those are some concerns we were able to hear from educators and shareholders and then also implement into this policy. School day is kind of the other big piece. What does school day mean versus instructional day? So it was defined here with legislative direction again as the period of time that a student is present on the school campus from their arrival until afternoon dismissal. Once again, that's kind of that philosophy of phone-free campus as opposed to just kind of individual pockets. A lot of educators have spoken to us about the issues of, well, it might be fine in my classroom, but then they go to the next classroom, if there's any kind of inconsistent enforcement or if there are issues in the halls or issues at lunch, then it just gives students another opportunity and temptation to access their device. In terms of consequences, you see that up here. We left it pretty loose for school districts themselves to define. We found that from both shareholder feedback from both our administrators and school board members that they wanted to be able to kind of dovetail that with their other policies that could make what works best for their individual districts. And then finally, I think I already mentioned device and accessories. So that's the basic policy. The other thing I would just talk about briefly are the exceptions. So first, that there are allowed if it's authorized for classroom use. That requires district superintendent approval. So it's not kind of a willy-nilly here, there, various enforcement, but rather the superintendent themselves has that ability to say yes or no and for these specific purposes. For the IEPs and medical plans as well, that was another piece of feedback we received, so included that. And then finally, for volunteer firefighting organizations or emergency services, for our students who are serving our communities, definitely want to make sure that they're accessible throughout the day for those specific purposes with the approval of their district superintendent or their designee. So that's about all I've got, but if y'all have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Yes, sir.
Can I share my thoughts on that? Dr. O'Shields, I think your idea of the night makes a lot of sense. Just because you can do it on technology doesn't mean you have to do it on technology. Many districts and schools have devices that are owned by the district. If they want to use those for that hall pass technology, that's fine, but this policy would prohibit and prevent the use of personal devices during the day for something such as that, because what we heard from educators, administrators, and the public is that a lot of the distractions that happen with cell phones happen in the hallway. One superintendent shared that when they went to a policy such as this, they were surprised at how less children requested to go to the restroom, because they were going to the restroom because they were getting that dopamine fix. They were going to check their phone. Or they were fighting during lunch and recording it. And so this would prevent that, but there's nothing wrong with a paper pass. And, you know, it worked for 50 years. I think we'd be okay to go back to that.
Also, as it currently reads, that's my brain. See, I'm just here. That's my brain. It basically says the proviso requires each local district to adopt a policy. The model policy must be adopted by districts and applicable to grades kindergarten through 12th or 24-25 school year. The local board must ensure that the policies include the school district publication in the comprehensive rules, procedures, standards of conduct, and the handbook. Handbooks have been printed. The year has started for many districts. What now?
So what I would say about that is that to make sure that students and parents are made aware of what the new policy is and that it is communicated in writing. And so I don't think that this policy envisions reprinting school handbooks that have already been printed and handed out, but it is, how do we notify parents in writing, how do we notify students in writing and communicate this policy change to them so that they are not caught unaware and are suffering consequences that they did not know would be in place if they did not follow the new policy. So I think the intent is around communication to folks, and that we all recognize that we wish that this policy had been passed in the summer, and it was in those handbooks at the beginning of the school year. Many districts did work ahead to try to implement a policy before the school year, but it would not require those handbooks be reprinted this year, but folks be placed on notice, and as we move forward into next year, it would be included then.
And I could be totally bonkers because he keeps me straight. He's my brain. My understanding is what I had understood. Understood can be wrong. That this would pretty much go into effect second semester was my understanding. We've already begun to disseminate the rank and file bits of this. What's the hurry to do it in one reading and not the traditional two? Like with instructional materials, I felt that we vetted it carefully. We gave opportunity for feedback. But this one seems more rushed, and for me, I'm hesitant because as superintendent, the more consequential a policy is, the more slowly we attempt at taking it to ensure that what we've done has met with as much eyesight as possible. And it's not a condemnation, because I am for the policy. I am just uncomfortable with the timing of it in a one-and-done format.
Yes, sir, that's a great question. One thing that I'd point out about that is that this is model policy, not regulation. And so I think that's part of the difference there. Unlike the instructional materials reg, which was regulation, this is model policy. It also sets the floor, not the ceiling. And so it's what is consistent across the state. Each district is going to be able to build upon that and add its local nuance and flavor. And what we heard from the school board's members that provided feedback is they really wanted the opportunity to begin this process early in the fall so that it could go through the process of first reading, second reading in their local districts with that local flavor. They would have the opportunity to have that passed and communicated so that they could be fully ready to implement in January. And so if we were to prolong that, it really puts the local districts and the local boards in passing that at a disadvantage and being able to communicate that well, widely, and transparently before the beginning of next semester.
And again, this is just me rambling. It's August. We do first reading, even though it's a model policy, September. We pass it. We've still got October and November in every district in the state. Now, some districts don't meet in December, but it's still, because we've already sowed the seeds. I mean, it's sown. We agree. It's, for me, personally for me, I am at this juncture a little more skittish to go with it at this point for reasons not the least of which was brought by Ms. Rainville. And I don't know, Ms. Rainville, if what you gave us was an unduplicated count. You know, sometimes students get suspended more than once. I don't know if that's unduplicated or not. But I also know that 504s are about as easy to get as a pin off me. If it becomes unwieldy because of diabetes or heart rate, or the smartwatch part sort of just has me, the phones and all that, I got you. I'm even for the smartwatch, but I'm just trying to keep away unintended consequences when people will look for an end around. And I'm trying my best not to have those because the policy has brilliance. The policy, in the eyes of Jonathan Haidt and in the eyes of looking at people talking again, I'm in that. I'm a little squirrelish with the timing, and I'm just wondering, and we all make the decision, I'm just one vote. But my thought was, you know, what would be the ultimate harm if, even with a model policy, we take it as first reading September 2nd. We still have October and November for all boards to deal with what we have and provide a chance for again, input, because y'all handled the instructional materials well. You handled that tremendously well. And I was in the superintendent's meeting. Some superintendents who weren't, they decided to go through me. And I told them as best I could, but I didn't know everything. And that was one of the things that I just wanted to bring to you, because, you know, I trust you, I respect you, I like you, I appreciate you. I didn't know when people started with not wearing socks, but I think that's cool too. But the thought is, for me personally, I would feel more comfortable with a approval on first reading and then have a chance for the department to vet it, because they're just, I want it right and I want it good. It's needed. It is most assuredly needed. It's just a little, to me, rushed, and I don't like my eggs runny.
Yes, sir. Well, I don't even have a vote, so I serve at the pleasure of this board and how all of you want to deal with that. The procedure was just really to try to make sure and honor the feedback that we got, that many boards wanted to be able to put it through their processes in the fall and have ample time to communicate it to parents and students. So we certainly defer to your wisdom on that.
And I will hush. There are others on this committee if they have questions.
Can I just make a comment? Silly, is it a question? Oh, thank you. I'm not sure how to work all this technology. We're all getting a lot of emails about this subject, I guess everybody else is too. And, you know, some interesting ones. What about the teachers is what the parents are saying. And it's not unusual, in my experience as a principal, to go in the classroom to observe a teacher who has her phone out and is using it. You know, and parents are quite concerned about that because in most probably faculty handbooks, there's some comment in there about no use of during instructional time, but that was what some of the parents said, that we were being much harsher on the children, and maybe we need to do something else with the adults in the room. I don't know if the superintendents, did they mention anything about that when they were meeting, that a policy that has?
What I think superintendents alluded to, one is sticking out in my mind, and what he said when we brought that up is that students are not adults, and so we also have to treat adults differently than we do students. I would also say that this proviso is very specific in its language, that it directs this board to create model policy around student use, not around teacher use. And so it's certainly within the purview of local boards to be more restrictive in how they deal with their HR policies. But this proviso directs this board around student use of personal electronic devices during the school day. So we did not contemplate that when we were writing this policy.
Thank you. I'll say up front that I definitely approve of the direction we're going in, but I do have some questions concerning it. We're at the point where we're going to leave to local boards to determine how they implement this. Am I correct?
This policy would set the floor, so it's saying you
Right.
cannot go below that, but they would be able, for example, to choose whether or not this policy extends to field trips. They would be, for example, within their rights to say, does it extend to the bus ride? We had about an hour-long discussion about whether buses should be included or should not be included in this policy, and it really depended on whether or not the rides were long, and the more rural districts who had an hour on a bus in some instances were adamant that it should not include those bus rides, and some of the other superintendents or board members who were usually in more urban areas thought that it should be. And so that was one reason we tried to set the floor to say during the instructional or during the school day, the bus rides were up to the local districts, and also field trips or athletic events, because there was some interest by some districts who also include athletic events in the prohibition. And so, again, we thought that was perhaps beyond the scope of what the proviso asked and may need to be decided by the local districts.
Okay. So at this point, we know that we've got local districts have already implemented something in their district. I'm familiar with some that already have. During academic instruction time, no phones are out. It has to be in your backpack or whatever. Do we foresee that we're going to have a gamut of different board decisions on how this is implemented? As you said, there's a floor, but above that floor, and students going from one district to another and those type thing, as opposed to us ending up with, let's just say, no cell phones during academic time, which a lot already have. They have to be. Are we moving so fast that we haven't put any type of criteria there that will help those districts so they'll be more uniform?
And Ms. Rita, what I think we've done is actually go a step beyond that to set the floor of what the proviso says, that there will be no access to personal devices during the school day. And so it is true that many districts currently have policies around instructional time or the instructional day. And what that allows for is the use of those devices at lunch, the use of those devices between the change of classes, and what the proviso says is they should not have access during the school day. And so that was kind of an aha moment for a lot of the district superintendents and school boards to say, oh, we really need to think about this more broadly, that we are limiting access during the school day versus just instructional time. And so I think that it will be a much more uniform model under this policy, that is at least understood, that during the hours of 7:30 to 2 or 8 to 3:30, depending on your bail schedule, there should not be the use of cell phones or the access of cell phones, personal devices for students, which I think is new in many cases.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lynn or Ms. Kreminger, anything?
I would just say, since I am a principal right now in a building, even though it's an elementary school, that teachers don't need, you should be teaching and monitoring and not texting and all. But I will also tell you, like, while I was sitting here, somebody needed to walk a first grader to a bathroom because the teacher was teaching. I will tell you that Raptor is an emergency system that is on here, and it was used in our district when we had a major problem, and that principal hit Raptor, and the police came from all over the region, and teachers knew to lock the building and those kinds of things. I just really tell them, and I have a school group text, and it has 78 people in it because I have 80-some people on staff. And if I need to get information to them quickly, it is a way that I can quickly say, and they know I don't send a lot of stuff out during the day. I send out an email every morning, and if I need to send out something, so if they see it coming from Jackie Lynn, they know you do something. Something's happening. So, no, anything can be excessive. I agree with that. And perhaps there should be some things set by boards or something as to how much with the use, excuse me, but trying to ban it from teachers, and I know no one said that, that's just not a good idea. And honestly, I've had teachers that came to work and said, I have a family emergency, but they will call me if they need me. My choice was coming to work, or if I can just have it out. I tell them, have it out. And then if you need to leave, I'd rather you be there for 4 hours than not at all. So I get it, and I do think the timing is difficult for districts right now. It is. I think I'm all for this policy too, but it is. I'm in an elementary setting. In my district's elementary children don't have these at all. It's already policy. So we're fine. We do need to remember that when it comes to discipline, there are different things happening all over the state. There's no set, if you do this, you do that, with any other consequence or any other behavior. So I'm not sure if we want to set a guideline for this. Me not putting my phone away may be a problem, but if Dr. Mathis is, using language and I'm not, and you can't, it's kind of different. So it is hard to just have this one thing here we're going to do. I do not want to see children going home all the time behind phones, but we got to figure this out. And districts may do that a little bit better than we just putting it out ourselves, saying here's what you can, or I don't know. I don't have all the answers. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Kreminger.
And as a former principal, it is very much needed. And I like the idea that it is the instructional day and not leaving it open to lunch, because we know what that would open up there. It's going to take great administrative support with the teachers, more so than anything else, and that's got to be stressed with the superintendents, that it's not going to be left up to the teachers to deal with this discipline issue with the phones, because they have enough that they have to deal with in the classroom. But this disruption is too much. It does need to get a handle on it, but the districts have got to be very supportive of that teacher, and school boards are going to have to be consistent with that discipline. And again, those administrators are going to have to be right on top of things and very consistent with that discipline with the phones. It can't be, which I can do this in one building and not in the other building, because that's just not going to work either.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the policy as it is presented by the State Board of Education? Hearing no motion, at this point, my assumption is to go to my brain. All right. There can then be an alternate motion that we can postpone in this for the period of time between now and the next meeting, so that we could possibly solicit with permission from, and I'm looking at Matthew and I'm looking, just that we can get additional information. That would there be a motion to postpone a decision until our next meeting in September? Is there a motion to approve that amended agenda? That amended motion, I'm sorry.
I so move.
All right, Board Member Kriminger makes that motion to approve. Is there a second? It has to be committee. Your committee.
Your committee. You are.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Joette makes the second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by like sign. The motion carries. And thank you, and you will write it up in a way that we will have it such that we will have that. Our second item, proposed changes to State Board of Education Rules of Governance, BC Board meetings. I think Philip Cease is here for this particular item.
Good morning, committee members. Thank you. This is a proposal to change a rule for the board meetings, moving it from the second Tuesday of each month to the first Thursday. And an initial draft of this, which I believe y'all may have received, but it's been updated, it said the second Thursday. So I just want to make sure if you have an old version, we are correct. We are proposing moving it to the first Thursday. The reason behind this is the way the state register works, which is the publication which deals with regulations. The due date for any documents you want published in the state register, so drafting notice, notice of first reading, notice of second reading, those are all due the second Friday of each month. And so the way we have it set up currently with the board meeting being the second Tuesday of each month, if the month starts on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, the way the state register publication happens, there's not enough time for a board meeting to occur, let's say, and I have a real world example here. This year in February, the state register publication was on the 9th. Our board meeting would have been the Tuesday after that. And so, Tuesday, let me walk back. February, our board meeting was on the 13th. The deadline for the register publication was on the 9th. So we missed that Thursday. Anything that happened in February would have had to wait until the March state register publication, which would have delayed it by 2 months. So this would basically allow us to kind of have a board meeting and then meet the deadline for state register for that month. This wouldn't affect the public comment period that's required by the APA, but would just kind of allow us to move things along when it comes to regulations.
And to the best of my knowledge, we have attempted to survey board members as to that time, and with minimal problem. Hence the reason my brain said 3 weeks, because it really wouldn't be the fourth Tuesday, it would be the first Thursday.
Correct.
So
it would be ahead of each publication deadline for the state register.
Are there any questions as it relates to this motion?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What is the reason for changing the day? I mean, I understand the time in the month, from just change from Tuesday.
As I understand, there were a couple of things unique to this year. One being the day, to my knowledge, Election Day, I think.
what it was?
Is that right?
Yeah.
And maybe the day, and I'm trying to get this in my head. There were a couple of oddities that happened that the first Thursday just seemed to be something that would allow us to do what we needed to do and get it approved without that lag to the state registry. That's
Correct.
my understanding.
Board members were polled and given the option of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Thursday was the option that worked the best. The main issue with Tuesday is every now and then when elections happen, that can be an issue.
But that was the thing that and I'm glad you asked that. I think that was one of the pushes against the Tuesday. And if y'all fight, I mean, we're going to vote. What other questions? Good question. All right, do I have a motion to approve? All right, Vice Chair Allison makes the motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Board Member Crimminger made the second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. I will defer to my brain as it relates to item 1. All right, so item 1 has been postponed, hence that's a no-brainer. And then item 2 would be a motion to put on our consent agenda from policy and legislation. Is there a motion for item 2 to be placed on the consent agenda?
I move that item 2 be put on the consent
All right, Board Member Allison makes the motion. Is there a second? Thank you. Ms. Lynn makes the second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Any other business?
I have a suggestion
Yes, sir.
as it relates to the cell phone policy.
Yes, sir.
A lot of our teachers were raised in the year where they're addicted to their cell phones as well. And I think we ought to have some kind of comment about the teacher needs to set the example, or, I mean, it ought to be some instructional thing. I think that some of those teachers are going to get the parents riled up if they're using the cell phones whenever they're in class. So, I mean, I think there ought to be something to address that issue and to raise the awareness of the teachers of their addiction.
And with that, Mr. Cathcart, Mr. Cease, Dr. Ferguson, just at least as a matter of courtesy, to just consider
And
as it
one
relates to
more
teachers.
thing, I think that I do agree with the young lady that made a proposal that we should never, all discipline that we have in school, the consequences ought to be educational. There ought to be an intention of changing behavior, not punishing the child. So I think to actually suspend somebody for that from school is a reward to those kids that you're doing that for.
And my 3 wise men down at the front, thank you very, very much. Any other business? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. I have a motion. Second?
Second.
Thank you. And did you get who it was? Because you're keeping up with it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.